So Ainslie, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to hear about your journey and to get your advice for everybody on how to do like what you've been doing at PIMCO. But just to start, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. You joined PIMCO with previous startup experience at LearnVest. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, I actually had been part of two startups before I joined PIMCO. The first was an options trading platform called Thinkorswim, which we exited to TD Ameritrade back in '08, I believe. And then after that, I joined a startup called LearnVest. I think I was employee 10 or 11 at the time. It was a content focused startup, and was part of the group that helped make the pivot to fee-based financial planning, kind of early robo-advisor type stuff. And I was the head of product, the head of marketing, and ultimately the COO there. And LearnVest was sold to Northwestern Mutual in 2015, I believe. So stayed and integrated that into Northwestern Mutual for a few years after. So two different startups, very different products, very different experiences, but luckily both with really successful exits. So what was it like to join an enormous Wall Street firm? It was really interesting, and sort of, I think with everything, a lot to learn, and I was able to bring a lot that I had learned to the experience. But PIMCO is a world-class firm, so they made it really easy. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, when you joined PIMCO, or you decided to join PIMCO, I mean, no one thinks of PIMCO as a startup. Did you know that you would essentially be doing a startup using the startup method inside PIMCO?
Yeah, I mean, that's what attracted me to the firm, honestly. It was pretty unique in the financial services industry, where its founder, Bill Gross, had built the firm to be this juggernaut, really based on his investing prowess, right? He was, the bond king, and had built the firm really based on the financial returns that the portfolio managers achieved. And there was really very little that the firm had done around client experience, around digital, and that's frankly what attracted me to it, is that I could come, literally start from nothing. I was employee number one in the space, and build it in the way that I thought would be really interesting and sustaining, and hopefully add a lot of value.
Yeah, so I'd love to dig into that. Can you walk us through how you thought about that startup challenge? So you're employee number one. What were the things you were like most focused on getting right?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing to get right was sort of the product, right? What was going to be the first thing that we did, and how were we going to be sure that it showed value very quickly? And then the team, because anyone in startups knows it's all about, especially early days, getting the right team together. So what I ended up doing is bringing someone into the group who just had currently at PIMCO, who had a passion for the topic. And she was my first hire. She's now one of our very senior product managers. Really had no background. We ended up training her, but she just had a real passion for the firm and for the product, and she'd come from sales, so she absolutely knew clients and customers. And then I went to our tech team, and very luckily for me, PIMCO had also just hired a new CTO, Dirk Molesky, from who had you guys know Dirk really well.
Yeah, big fan of Dirk's.
Yeah, so he really luckily had joined the firm at the same time. So I went to the tech team and I said, who could what engineer might you give me? What lead engineer could we work with on this stuff? And so with one product manager and one engineer, And the engineering lead was this fantastic person, again, who was just really interested in trying something new, really open to learn. We got going and brought, a few more engineers on and started working on our first product.
And when you thought about, that the time that you were going to have to show something of value, how much time were you thinking?
Yeah, my head was 6 months because,
That sounds reasonable.
yeah, that's just sort of,
Right.
startup style. I think because we're in a highly regulated industry with, a sort of a lot of eyes on a $2 trillion firm, it ended up taking more like 9 months to get it out the door. But when we thought of the first product, we really went shopping within the things that PIMCO was already doing that were proven to drive client value that we could scale. So we said, like, what do we have that is already working today on a small scale that if we could digitize it, we could give, an incredible amount of leverage to our teams and touch many, many more clients. And luckily, we had a bunch of those. There was a terrific financial engineering team at PIMCO who really does brilliant work. But, they were doing it in PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets. And we had the way to track that work created lift, right? Business lift. So we started there. We just said, what do we already have in the house that we know works, that if you put a, digital experience behind it, it'll drive business. And as I said, we are lucky. We're lucky to have a bunch of those. And the first one we picked was a winner.
I want to dig a little bit into this recruitment process. So did you sort of have carte blanche to just go recruit people onto your team? Like, how did that work?
No, not even. So one amazing thing about PIMCO is that it is a very large firm that actually employs not a lot of people. So I think firm-wide, we're something like 2,500 people running that kind of money. And so we're really, really, focused on headcount and not necessarily adding a lot of headcount until value has been achieved. So I started with 2 heads in my group, this tech lead, and then we ended up working with a partner that helped us train some more tech leads and help with development at the same time. We used a company called Pivotal Labs to help us get started. And that was a really great decision because they not only helped us, with the product itself, but really helped the team adopt all the true agile practices, get very good at them, figure out how to tailor it to our needs. They were just a terrific partner in helping us get everything off the ground. So I got the budget for that. I got these couple of hires. I had a product I was pretty sure was going to drive value, or at least all evidence would suggest. And then it was kind of like go. And so we went for 8 months and released our first product right around then.
And in terms of the mix, when you looked at the recruitment, so you had an external firm and you had some folks internally. Were you also recruiting new people from outside PIMCO into your team?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So one of the things I did very early days, which I think has just had such an enormous impact, and we were chatting a little bit about this before the session, is I hired a killer head of design and user experience. Because, startups had shown me that, design matters, user experience matters, and consumer grade experiences for advisors and finance in general is really what was making the fundamental difference in the industry. So I hired this amazing, over avocado toast downtown somewhere, hired this amazing head of design and user experience who was willing to come in. Like, this is, a guy who'd run large teams of designers before, really willing to come in as employee number 1, get back into the seat of design to start, And of course, as we've grown, he's been able to manage the group and drive best practices and set our design system and all the things you would ever hope for. So, sort of hired over my skis a little bit there, but what a great decision, because he's really been able to drive so much excitement for products because they're so easy to use.
Yeah, really, just having a great designer and a great design team brings all of the ideas to life. And it's um, as much as we can get bogged down in the finance in our space, end users, just like things that are easy to use and that look great. So it's amazing how far that goes. Now for that first project that you did, can you just tell us a little bit more about like what was your what were the metrics? What were you trying to move in terms of the scaling that product that was small, and did you have those metrics in mind when you kicked that project off?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned, we were doing, let's say, like a couple of thousand of these studies a year, before they got digitized. Really, in send me your Excel spreadsheet. I'll go to the back room and do the analysis. I'll come back. I'll make it nice in a PowerPoint deck, and I'll send it back to you. And I think our turnaround time was something like 2.5 weeks. We took all those users and we looked at what they held pre-study, what they held post-study. We could see it was an enormous lift, business lift. So what our hypothesis was, well, if we could go from 2,000 studies to 10,000 studies, that would be amazing. And if users could self-service, they might even like it even more. So really our KPI at the time was just adoption of the analytical tool, of the analysis. If they would do it, we would see the business lift. And so we quickly got all of our account team, our salespeople, on able to do the studies. We got users on able to do the studies, and so we've seen, I don't know what the latest numbers are, but early adoption, very, very high engagement with this tool, and so we're seeing the business lift that we expected, and it really just came from scaling it out, to be honest.
That's great. One of the fun things about startups is actually getting funding. And usually the way you do it is you tell somebody a pretty good story, and then you've got to go deliver. And then if you deliver, they or others will give you more money. Was your experience similar, where you had sort of an initial budget, but you're kind of constantly pitching to be able to take on more based on that success?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, like, I really respected that as a funding mechanism, having come from startups, because I think one thing large companies do wrong is sort of create big annual budgets for tech initiatives and then expect the development to like fit and be done. That was a 2019 project. Aren't you done now? I gave you $50 million. And I just think that whole funding model in technology in big companies, it's certainly changed in startup land, but I also think it needs to change in big companies, because that's not the way tech works, right? Like, you're not done. You always need to be investing and moving the feature set forward. And if something is a bad idea, it shouldn't get a lot of money. And you don't know that really until it's in the market, right? So I think these like big, budget processes in big companies, especially in tech, need to change. And the way I used to describe it to some of my colleagues at Northwestern Mutual, who were sort of also getting used to this, approach, as I said, it's like a dial on a stove, right? Like, you can start at simmer, and if it's working, you can turn heat up. If it's not working, you can turn heat off. You can turn the burner off if it's a real failure. But you don't want to think about things in years, right? Like, you just want to think about it in terms of order of magnitude. And so I had someone who brought me into the organization, who he and I had all these conversations as I was going through the recruiting process. And he's like, I get it. I understand. So I'll give you, he was one of the big business line leads. He's like, I'll give you a few $1,000,000 to get started, and you tell me when I need to give you more. I was like, fair deal. So, you know, it's just kind of rolled from there, where now, you know, I think people are trusting us to make the right estimates for what we want to do at the different dials, and sort of spend appropriately. So I feel like, you know, the funding mechanism has gotten easier over time. That's for sure.
And just out of curiosity, like who are you sort of pitching for the funding?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
right now, so it's a really interesting structure that I have right now. So PIMCO has four major sort of business leads as it relates to client-facing business. So, you know, our head of institutional clients, which are like, you know, the treasury department of blah blah company, you know, the sovereign wealth fund of blah blah country. So those kinds of clients. We have retail, our retail division, and then we have our Europe and Asia is sort of our main four divisions. So now I have all four of those heads contributing and spending. And what we're doing is basically a sort of a business-based allocation. And so I meet with them every couple of months. We talk about priorities. We talk about, you know, where we are, progress, and they, you know, they sign up for the next round. So that's how it's been working, and it's been really interesting, because they also have to agree what the priorities are, which is nice. But then we all kind of march forward together.
That's terrific. So you must have a reasonable sized team now to be able to support kind of four
Yeah, we
different
do. I mean, so we partner with
programs.
technology, right? So all our devs sit in the tech org, but yeah, we have a reasonable sized team now. It's growing every day, and what's really exciting about it is that I think because we started small, we showed value, we iterated quickly. There's a lot of trust now,
Yeah.
and it's such a nice way to come into an organization, to sort of come in a little under the radar, and then be able to deliver, and then just have the momentum and the trust build, because I'm really proud of the team that's, you know, that's come into global digital, and they are all working so hard every day to earn that trust, and it's nice to see that happen.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's amazing how tied trust is to that iterative process. You know, if you have a process where people go away for a year and they try to build something, like how could they possibly know what's going to work? And so when they come back, you know, the people look at it and go, oh, well, you know, can't trust that team. But if you're actually able to deploy frequently, you're able to get customer feedback frequently, you're much more likely to, you know, to be aimed at the right problems and to be solving them in the right way. So, you know, we're obviously huge fans of that approach. It's a big promise of web development in general. Can you tell us what your top digital priorities are going into 2021?
Yeah, we're focused on sort of really cool and unique value-added tools that only PIMCO can provide. So we're the world's largest fixed income manager, and we have a very large and very rapidly growing business in alternative investments. And so there's things that we can uniquely do, and analytics that we can uniquely provide. So we're focused on bringing those to life. As I said, we have this amazing financial engineering team who cooks up all kinds of goodness that we get to leverage. And then we're also really focused on sales enablement. So how do we create an omni-channel model so that our client-facing teams don't have to do kind of mundane routine work and can really be focused on solutions for their clients. And so how do we take all of the boring stuff off their plate, and allow them to have superpowers, really, frankly, and as it relates to how they serve their clients. So we have a lot
Are you able to see?
in those kitchens. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you able to like quantify time saved for for different teams, and is that a prism through which you look at success?
Yeah, so we are really clearly creating a language of an analytical language of what we call it, at least at PIMCO, activities, right? So an activity could be a meeting, it could be a phone call, it could be a digital analysis, right? And we're creating those activities to be this common language, so we can start to create the correlations between, like, this one plus that one is a better outcome than this one, and this one. And so, it's really interesting that the sales teams have been such great partners in helping us figure out, okay, what is the equivalent to a meeting, right, in the digital world? What should that look like? What should that be? 3 things, 1 thing, And so we're starting to package those up, capture them all, feed them in through our analytical engines, and really going to be, we're going to have a lot of insight very soon about, what are the best combinations and what does the best service model look like, and doing that in a very data-driven way.
And has the way that you've thought about solving that kind of problem, has that been impacted significantly by COVID and work from home, or is it?
Yeah,
or were you already a distributed team, and so it hasn't changed that much?
I think listen, I think the thinking has been the same, but the urgency to get it done is higher, because I think everyone realizes, if they didn't realize before, which was already a sort of, as PIMCO would say, a secular trend, it was already a long-term trend, how technology was changing all businesses. They certainly realized it when, March 14th, they had to log on and do business remotely. So I think that the awareness of a future being a hybrid model of human and digital interactions forever, like we're never going back, I think has sort of heightened the willingness to invest here. But I don't think it's surprised anybody, to say it that way.
Yeah, one piece of feedback we've gotten from a number of our customers, buy side and sell side, is that working from home, they have about half as many monitors as they did at work, and so that's changed, their ergonomics and how they think about screen real estate and a whole number of other things. So it's interesting to see that change. And as you said, we've seen that urgency across the board, with our customer base and moving a lot of the digital agenda forward. It's been a serious forcing function.
A minor thing on that point, we've certainly seen people want things where you don't have to go through a sort of VDI to get there, that everything has to be hugely responsive, because you never know what device you're going to be on during your day, right? Is it my phone? Am I on my iPad? Am I on my computer? Am I in the office? So yeah, I'd say some of the, sort of, how you work type things have certainly changed with COVID, for sure.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, just to close out, Ainslie, can you leave our audience with some advice on, if they're in a large company and they're essentially trying to do a startup inside, what are some of the things that they should be doing to maximize their chances at success?
Yeah, I think it's classic advice, but I would start small and iterate, and prove your value, and sort of do the under promise, over deliver trick, because I think when you ask for large scale investments, you ask for people to fundamentally change and do things differently, and you sort of don't leg into it and show the value over time, it's just too much, right? It's too much for a a big company who has, you know, probably the way they do business established today, and really, you know, if they're not a software business, you know, this is something they have to get used to. And so just start small, iterate, find something of value, build a great team, you know, those kinds of things. But yeah, and just, you know, I wouldn't say stay patient actually, because I think some great impatience is going to drive a lot of value, but just start small.
Terrific. Well, all really wonderful advice. Ainslie, thank you so much for joining us.